Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of Make Every Second Count Live with me, your host and international award-winning Make Every Second Count speaker, Jeff Marconette Jr. Each and every time I say that, I'm quite shocked myself that it's actually true, because when I first started saying it, it wasn't true, but it is now. So I ask you guys if you would please share this episode out. Invite all kinds of people to watch it. Just tag them in the comments if you would. Hello, Robert. Good to see you tonight. And then please keep the likes coming. Give us all kinds of thumbs up, hearts, frowny faces, cry faces. Heck, you can even get mad at us. I don't care. Just help us trick the algorithm on one of the only, well, I don't know, or just on one of the social media networks we're on. But I also want to say that tonight is the 52nd week of the year. That means this is the last show of the year. This is the final for season 9. And we're back for season 10 in a week from today. But that's beyond the point. So we actually have a great guy tonight, and I would like to bring him to the stage. So with no further ado, Jerry. Hey Jerry, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jeff. How are you?
Oh, I am phenomenal, and I just keep getting better every second.
It sounds like it. I love the energy, man. I really
Well,
do.
thank you so much. I try to bring the energy all the time. I live pure energy, so I drink enough caffeine that I have it. So, if you would like to go through a short introduction about yourself and tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and what you do, I'm going to be sharing this episode out here on Facebook and letting people know that they can watch.
Perfect. Well, my background is fairly unique. I am child number 7. My mother had 9 kids. My mother and dad had 9 kids altogether. I'm child number 7. My mother had 6 kids when she was 23 years old, if you can believe it. So she brought home a brand new infant, and she had a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-old at home. So 6 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 kids, 5 and under, if you can imagine that. So, and then 7 years later, they had me and didn't want me to have be an only child. So I have a little brother and a little sister, and so grew up very interesting in the 70s. Having a little brother that's 22 months younger than I did. And we grew up like a lot of kids in the 70s. We struggled for everything that we've got. So I was 11 years old, got my first job where I paid taxes, if you can believe it, as an 11-year-old, 1980. I've never not paid taxes since. And I learned the value of work very early on. That first job I got was washing dishes at a local restaurant about a mile from my house every Saturday morning, 6:30 in the morning. There I was washing the dishes. And at the end of the day, they let me pick whatever I wanted to eat. And again, when you come from a big family like I did that didn't have a lot of resources, being able to grab whatever you wanted off that menu and eat it was extraordinary. And I remember that meal so well. That club sandwich with a bunch of extra fries in it, that to this day, that connection between food and work has never really dissipated much. I'm one of these guys that has really never missed a day of work. I've been sick a lot. I've been through a lot of issues over the years, and I just keep kicking. I started my own company at 28 years old. After living with hookers and heroin addicts on the street at 17 years old in a $25 a week flop house. But again, during all of those times, I've been shot. I've been shot at. I've been stabbed. I've been beaten within an inch of my life multiple times. Throughout all of that, I held down a job. And so I started my own business at 28. And at 33, I was a millionaire. And in the intervening 20 years, I've done hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue.
Wow.
I've employed 10,000 people, but most importantly, that's my day job. My real job was raising three fantastic kids. My wife and I have been married 28 years, been together 32 years. And really of any of the things that I've accomplished, I think those three things, my three kids and my wife, are probably the greatest accomplishment of all. So in a nutshell, that is my background and my story.
That is awesome. So I know from personal experience that life has a tendency to throw things in our way. Stuff that tries to hamper us, stuff that tries to say that we don't need to go any further because this is in the way and we need to figure out how that we're going to get around this. Because you see, at the age of 17, I spent 2.5 months in a coma after a severe car accident. I was told I probably wouldn't walk again. But I decided that I wasn't going to listen to all the people around me. And I'm so glad I did that now, because I've walked on 4 continents now, and I've spoken to over 10,000 kids, probably in like 4 different countries, and it's just been amazing to me. But has there been anything that you have had to grow through on your journey to becoming a multimillionaire?
Yeah, you learn when I was younger, I was never susceptible to peer pressure for the most part. There was something different about me. And I think because of the years difference between my older brothers and sisters and me, I got to kind of see what teen pregnancy looks like. I got to see what drugs looked like. I got to see what alcohol looked like. I got to see what going to jail looked like. The environment that I was in, again, as a street kid, I got to see kind of the worst parts of what society can throw at you. And really, for me, somewhere along the line, that personal responsibility became such a guiding force in my life that I was able to avoid many of the pitfalls that ultimately take down so many people that come from the same place that I do. And so having those examples, if you will, in front of me saved me from making bigger mistakes. And it's not that I didn't make mistakes, but that from making those ultimately bigger mistakes. I'll tell you a really quick story. I was 14 years old. I was taking some money out of the bank. Again, back in those days, when you're a poor kid and you've got any kind of money in the bank, that's a big deal. And then if you have a bank card, I'm 56 years old. So getting a bank card back in the day with your name on it was just, it just meant you had arrived. And so I had $85 in the bank. I took 80 of it out. You had to leave $5 in those days. And I wasn't paying attention. I'm 14 years old. The year before, I had gone blind in my right eye, completely lost all of my vision, and my sister had died, my next oldest sister, within 6 months of each other. So, maybe I wasn't quite myself. Anyway, I got robbed. The 4 guys got me at the bus stop, put it to me pretty good, rolled me under the bus stop, and left me for dead in the middle of August. I get out from underneath the bus stop a couple hours later. I get on the bus. They'd broken my nose. They'd broken 2 ribs. They took everything I have, which really didn't have any value at the time, because the thing that I had that I valued the most was my life, and I still had that. So I get on the bus, and I got a transfer, and I go to the transfer point. I lived in Portland, Oregon at the time. I live in Tennessee now. And I could take you to the stop going over the freeway. It's still there, this extra big spot in the sidewalk, that I heard a voice from outside my head as I'm bleeding down my front, and both eyes are black. They put it to me really well. I couldn't hardly breathe with the broken ribs, but a voice said to me, "It's all your fault." Now, Jeff, this is a true story on my mother's eyes. The voice was outside of my head, and I was walking by a duplex, and I thought someone was yelling at me outside, through the window. So much so that I turned, but there's no one there. Now, again, I don't know if it was God or Jiminy Cricket or Buddha, whoever it was, but something said to me from outside of my head, back and behind me to my right, said, "It's all your fault. If you don't change what you're doing, you're going to be like everyone else." And I argued with it. I literally was like, I'm standing there on the corner in the middle of August. It's hot as hell, and arguing with no one there, saying, clearly I'm delirious. how can it be my fault? It's not my fault. And off I go. But I remember this so clearly. And conversely, my nose was broken. I have a little nubbin up in here on top, and I went home for 3 days and just held it shut until it quit opening. And that's kind of how I fixed that. Ultimately, the ribs, who still hurt to this day, all these years later, healed. But the point of that story is everything is my fault stuck with me. I wasn't a hockey stick. It didn't take right away. But over time, about the time my son was born at 28 years old, my first son, it coincided with the offers I got to go start a new business, of which I knew nothing about. And it kind of collated all together. It came together. And from that, then I listened to that. Everything is my fault. And then everything I did after that kept me grounded and non-emotional. All of the health issues that I've had over the years, I've been hospitalized 61 times since January, since 2017. I broke my back when I was 19 years old. I've been addicted to opioids for 20 years. I was stabbed with a 10-inch screwdriver in another mugging that's another story, at 19 years old. And so all of these things that I had been through, I always never pointed at anybody else, because I grew up watching everybody else point at everybody else. When you're poor and you come from those neighborhoods, it's everyone else's fault that you are poor and in those neighborhoods. And a lot of those people don't want to see you do well, because they lose their excuse for the reasons why they can't get out if somebody else does. So I had that draw always trying to drag me back. And ultimately, at the end of it, I ignored it. From that epiphany I had, that interaction I had with that voice after getting, beaten damn near to death, that stuck with me. And ultimately at 28, it really started to take hold. And I lived my life blaming no one for anything, and everything is my fault.
Wow. The whole, I like the whole taking responsibility for your own life. And you did that early on. You figured that out. But how can you explain that to somebody who doesn't understand that they have the power to control everything in their life if they just realize that it is their responsibility and nobody else's? So if you're saying everything is your fault, then you're taking responsibility and realizing that you control a lot.
Yeah, I think that part of why I'm here and telling my story and having this conversation is so that people can get a sense of what you are capable of doing. One of my passion projects has always been to talk to the young guys and let them know. And some of as I've gone back into my neighborhood that I grew up with, and I reconnected with some of the people who I had grown up with, who of course were, spent decades in jail and largely around drugs. A few years ago, in fact, one of the guys I met up with, and we ended up talking for hours, and he just said, I just never met somebody like you. I didn't know people like you existed. I didn't know that people could come where we come from, because everyone kind of goes that same direction. So part of the story, and part of me here doing this, is so people can hear what's possible. And when you blame somebody else, you give them all the power. And I didn't want anybody having power over me, period. And so I've had employees that made six-figure mistakes on my behalf. So cost me six figures in money over the years. And here's the thing though, Jeff, I've made seven-figure mistakes. I mean, I have made a massive amount of money over the years, but I also have lost an inordinate amount of money over the years by the mistakes. So I've had the highs and I've had the lows, but I put somebody in place and I gave them the ability somehow, even though I may not have seen it, to cost me six figures as an example. Well, I could lose my head and go nuts and yell and scream, but there's no money in that. There's no value in that. You don't get anything from that. You get blinded to what's in front of you. And I'm using this as an example, losing $100,000 on some deal, or even more, that somebody made a mistake on my part. But it might be somebody cutting you off in traffic, which when I was younger was absolutely a capital offense, and you had to go down. In my day, when I grew up, if somebody looked at you wrong, you better throw that fist first because it's coming your direction. I mean, that's how I grew up. It was literally, kill or be killed. I've seen multiple murders in my lifetime and multiple suicides. So, I mean, just about as much experience in that realm as you can imagine. I've lived through that. And somehow I had to learn to temper that because everything is my fault. And when everything is my fault, I get all the responsibility. No one has control over me. Sometimes that meant I got taken advantage of in the ways that I lost money. I've had family members steal gas from my gas stations, as an example. I mean, just across the board. But at the end of the day, I don't blame them. I blame me. What did I do that allowed them to do that to me? What did I do that allowed Jerry? It's not your fault. You couldn't have seen it coming. That's right. So next time now I look at that and I take something from it and I say, what did I do that put me in a spot that person was able to have that impact on me? And then I fix it. Or sometimes I don't fix it and it happened again. 100%, right? I've been burnt more than once doing the same mistake. The point being, both times it's my fault.
Now, you see, I have a tendency to say that we have to grow through things because if we just go through things, we often repeat those things until we learn that lesson that thing was supposed to teach us. And I like the point that you just made, that you grow through it by learning what you did in order for that person to take advantage. But if you don't learn from that, if you don't grow from that lesson, then you often repeat it. And you just pretty much spelled that out for us.
Yeah, the key to that, I mean, it's absolutely true, is that I always say I've hired 10,000 people in my life, and every time I never looked at where they went to school or what they did. I want street smarts and I want common sense. And when you figure out that street smarts and common sense is a fantastic superpower to have, you're capable of doing a lot of things. A lot of the guys that I grew up with and that I have interacted with as I've gone back into the neighborhoods over the years have been the guys that have that street smarts and that common sense. They just don't have the knowledge, right? Like my buddy that said, I never met somebody. I mean, he spent 25 years in the hole. He just never had met anybody like me. Somebody to simply tell them that the tools that you have that help you survive and keep you alive in those environments are a huge asset to you in the real world. But we're told, well, you're a criminal, or you did, I stole food to eat as a kid all the time. Me and my brothers had all kinds of scams to steal stuff. You're told you're a criminal, you spent time in jail, all of those things. And there's no one out there telling you that the tools that I used, that the scams that my brother and I came up with when we were 8 and 10 years old to steal stuff and get out clean, is the same kind of skills that I use today in my businesses. I'll tell you, when I worked at McDonald's at 17 years old, they quickly moved me up the ladder, and I went from making $3 to $3.10. But it was the experience, and the experience I had working at McDonald's for 8 or 10 months in when I was 16 years old, I use in my business today. And have over the last 25 years. These guys paid me $3 an hour to teach me skills that I still use today. Now, how many people do you know that look at their minimum wage job like that? Now, I didn't at the time, but I certainly have learned that lesson since, that those skills were absolutely important. And I couldn't believe in hindsight that they paid me to teach me them.
There is a lot of things that I have noticed that you can pick up when you actually look back at things. When you think back of something that you did in the past, you can often learn from that. Mm-hmm. Just the same as when you read a book or something, you can learn from that stuff too. And how did you get to the point that you actually looked at it and were like, look at what I gained from this?
I think that again, like everything, nothing is a hockey stick. Nothing just goes and takes off. It takes years and sometimes decades. But like I said, it all came together for me when my son was born at 28. Changed my life when he was born. And so I didn't have any kids, and I hadn't planned on having any kids. But then he was born, and the way I looked at the world, and the introspection that I had, and the soul searching that I did when he was born, really kind of took all of those experiences that I had before and brought them all together. I was an angry man. I was brutal. I knew everything. I was running a company for another lady. I'd grown it from $1 million a year to $5 million a year. And I had people twice my age, hundreds of them working for me. And I thought I knew everything, and I was everything, which it turns out I didn't really know much of anything. And my son was born, and it just opened my eyes up to the things that I needed to see. There was a second big epiphany of my life at 28 years old. I was sitting in my office running this company. Somebody had approached me about starting a business, and I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know what a P&L was for a business or a balance sheet or any of those things. And I was staring at this documentation thinking I was king of the world. I had just survived all of these things. I was making 50 grand a year. It's, 1980, or what year would have been, 1990s, mid 1990s. I was doing all right for myself. And I didn't know what I was looking at. And I had the second big epiphany of my life. Again, inside my head, this voice says to me, this time inside my head, you got to shut up and listen. You don't shut up and listen nearly enough. Now, again, I don't know where any of that came from, but I listened to it because I was open to it because my son was born. And so I started to get rid of all of my friends. I mean, at that point, I was playing sports, watching sports, talking about sports, drinking in a bar while watching and talking and playing sports. I mean, it was all about sports. And all of a sudden, with my son born, I wanted something else. I wanted something more. And it changed my life almost in an instant because I started looking at my background two separate ways. I am who I am in spite of where I come from, but I am who I am entirely because of where I come from. And both things can be true at the same time. And so I don't look back on any of that with any animosity, any ill will. The things that I had to struggle through and the adversity I had to put up with and all of the violence and all of the things that I've seen and done made me who I am. And surviving all of that gave me superpowers in a way to do things that so many other people around me couldn't do. I made some good decisions along the way, obviously, that got me somewhere, but really it wasn't anything quick to answer your question. It was just kind of all at one time at 28 years old. The second my son dropped out and he was ready to go, a brand new baby boy, I said, man, I got to go split the atom. I got to go crush the world. I got to learn, man. This playing, watching, talking sports program while doing this 9-to-5 job is not for me. I want more for my children than I ever had. And that really was what brought it all together for me.
We do have Robert in the comments here, who is from Canada. He said that's quite the radio voice you got there, Jerry.
Yeah,
so
I appreciate that.
And I have to point that out too, because it does sound like you're a professional person on the radio. Like, seriously, that's crazy.
I appreciate that. Nope, just maybe I just talk too much.
No, you don't talk too much. So I'm curious. If you had, well, all right, we have about 6 minutes left on this show. So if you had 5 minutes to teach somebody one thing or two things about how they can improve their life, what would those one or two things be?
The first one right off the top, particularly for the young guys and particularly for guys that come from where I come from, but this goes for everybody. And that is that my experience has been when I ran these companies when I was in my 20s, I remember the older guys telling me that you don't know anything until you're 40. And I was like, man, you're 50 and you work for me and you don't know anything. And because I was this hot shot. And over the years, I have learned that person is absolutely correct, that really it's hard to just have enough information to really make good decisions and excel until you're 40. And I look at it like a hard drive. And so I think a superpower for some of the young guys is that when you are young, let's say you're 25 years old, I don't care how educated you are, your hard drive's maybe 20%. I'm just use this. Your hard drive's about 20% full. If you're me at 56 and you've been through all of these things and you've done all of these things, maybe mine's at 80%. I'm just using these numbers. So, 20 and 80%. But the reality is that the 25-year-old thinks he's at 80%. And the 56-year-old that's had all of this experience, what I'm learning more and more every day is I don't know anything. I'm going to die before I'm going to be able to learn all of the things that I want to learn. And so one of the tricks, though, again, at 28 for me was I was very interested in what was possible. And there was nothing in my way. I didn't know better, right? I bought a house when I was 20 years old. I didn't know what an interest rate was. I didn't know what equity was. I had no idea what a mortgage was, but I read an article that said you need to buy a house, $87,000. I paid 12.5% interest on it. I used that house to refinance my company 3 times in the early days as I was building it from 28 to 33 years old. So the reality there is that I just was constantly wanting to learn, understanding that I don't know anything. And you got to shut up and listen in order to achieve that. And I mean, really listen. And particularly in today's world where there's so many people that all sound like what they know what they're talking about. And from the outside, with my experience, so much of social media is not true. 80-90% of it is not reality. It's not the way the world works. And so what I would want those people to understand is that you can shut up and listen, and you can learn, and you can change, and you can do so much more, and you're so much more capable than you think you are. And the world, and this is critical, Jeff, the world does not work the way that you guys think it does. But you don't know that until you go out and you find that information, you have the experiences yourself, and you maybe meet up with somebody or get a mentor that can help you understand that. And that's where kind of that, man, it's just really tough to think that you know anything prior to about 40 years old.
Wow, that you're insulting some young people here.
Just because I was one of them. That's all and that's part of it too. All I do is speak from my experience. That's all I can do. So I have this breadth of experience, and I was that young man. However much anyone thinks listening to this that they know anything, I promise you at 28 years old, I thought I knew 10 times that you did. I was the worst. I was incorrigible, but I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't learn, if that little voice didn't tell me at 28 years old to shut up and listen. And I went out and found people that were smarter than me. I left the neighborhood. I left my friends that I grew up with, and I surrounded myself with people that I was inferior to. And that's very difficult to do, but they taught me a ton. They taught me a world I didn't understand. I didn't even know it was out there. And again, I'm sitting here having done all the things I've done because of that decision at 28.
That's awesome. So I like what you said there. You find people that know more than you. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but find somebody that can teach you something.
Right.
That is great advice for me. So, or great advice to me. But do you happen to have any contact information you would like to give out?
So to that end, if anybody happens to be have an entrepreneurial spirit to them, or they think they want to step out, go to the kronosgroup.org. You can find me, Jerry Brazile, Brazie, anywhere. But the kronosgroup.org, and you can go on there if you want to try to reach out to me and set up. And I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody about anything. I love the game of business, but I also love the game of life. And I've got all of this experience. I'm a straight talker, as you can tell. So I'm a no BS kind of guy, and I'll just tell you as straight as it is. And I didn't read it in a book. I didn't learn it in high school. I didn't learn it in some college. I have zero education, the traditional ways. All of my education comes from the streets and my experience. And so that's where people can find me if they are interested in the message that I have.
Yes, that is awesome. But I need everybody out there, including you, Jerry. Oh, I need to say hello to Greg Walker as well, also known as the Big Dreamer, and he's from Columbus, Ohio. So good to see you, Greg. Sorry you missed it too. You can always catch the replay though. And then I need everybody out there to do me a favor. This week, next week and for the rest of your life. I need you to make every second count. Why? Because you never know when those seconds will run out on your one life. Hey, have a fantastic new year, but be safe. Remember, no drinking and driving. And thank you again, Jerry. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy evening to be here with me and my viewers.
Absolutely, Jeff. I enjoyed it very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Absolutely.